so we do look like we came out the same litter.
Yeah. Y'all look like family, but
we do.
The truth is that we are all family.
We are all
That's
family.
That just happens to be the truth.
You put us live on Patreon? Nice.
I know about people probably sitting here. Just got a few people and dropped in over here to look to see what I'm doing on.
Welcome to the God Harmony Podcast.
Yeah, I don't even know the name of it. I can't.
Is the link live on YouTube? Did you put it under Let Danny Tell? You put it under me. Okay, you put it under God Harmony. So we bounce back and forth between me having my own podcast and me being a part of the podcast of Let Danny Tell It podcast. So
God Harmony, that's on YouTube.
It's all the things. Let's see if I can pull up the link.
See if you got Harmony.
Yeah, you better go check. Oh, if I type in roll out, it'll come up. It will. Let me type in roll out.
Roll out. I always love to say in my next life I will be able to sing.
You could sing in this lifetime. I found it.
Not in the way that I like to.
Okay, so I'm live on Facebook. That's our title for today. Nick is very good at having very controversial topics. So I tried to figure out something that I felt was appropriate and controversial.
That will be controversial.
Appreciate it. Let me know when you're ready.
All right. Welcome to our June 1st-ish, the first Friday in June, Got Harmony podcast. I have a special guest today. I am very honored and privileged to bring to the screen my own very own connection to yoga and all things powerful. To the left of me, I have J. Cole, or Jeanne Cole. Go ahead and tell the people who you are, what you're doing.
Oh my God, who am I? That's a spiritual question and an egoic question.
Go ahead.
From a spiritual perspective, everyone.
Yes, you are.
We're all the very same when you understand that. From an egoic perspective, in the sense of time and space, my name is Jeanne Cole Thomas II, born and raised in South Central LA. I'm 52 years old. I'm proud to say I'm 52. My father didn't make it to 26.
Wow.
Right. Mom's had me when I was 16. I'm completely self-made, meaning that I have a GED, but I wind up having a computer career that kind of let me work around the world, if you will. Now I own my own yoga studio. There's 4 of us that own the Tree Yoga Cooperative, which I'm very proud of because it was a conscious decision to step away from corporate America and like step out and do my own thing. And, you know, it was what I wanted to do, which was understand who I was and in that same thing, help other people gain that same empowerment. Because once you know who you are, there's no touching you. Right? Can't nobody come up and now get you off your game, unbalance you, if you will. Right? Being in the zone at all times, that's what we try and get into to be yogis. Right? To where at every game I'm going to play, I'm going to be in the zone in. And that's, you know, what you see when you see that favorite singer that you're watching, when you see that favorite basketball player that, right, like ain't nothing distracting that cat. He is in that zone. And in a sense of who I am. I'm someone who is a seeker of that zone. And to be in that zone, again, from Christianity, that's to be in Christ consciousness, Buddhist consciousness, on and on and on. Everyone teaches this same understanding of who we are.
And that is why I wanted him to be my first guest when I did my first official First Friday podcast. And we were introducing yoga from a Black perspective. So today we appropriately titled, Is Yoga for Black People?
I like that title, though. Yoga from a Black perspective.
Yoga from a Black perspective. You can change it to that. And to the front of me, always running the house, I have.
Shalom to the people. That's all they get from me.
That's all they get today.
Shalom.
That's my brother from another mother.
Yeah,
Nick.
Greetings, man.
Love that man. I love that man.
That was a great intro, brother.
Oh, thank you. That's just me.
Yeah.
Well, the first part you said when you were describing who you were, you made a difference in it. What was the first thing you said?
Spiritual and egoic.
Egoic. I haven't heard that word before, but I like where you're going with it.
Our ego, right? In the sense of
where you're going.
This is the thing of where we believe in our separation. We believe that we actually have nothing to do with one another. And in that, we find ourselves lost. And this is that egoic perspective that it's about just this me. All right? When you're coming from a spiritual perspective, then you understand that, well, it's about this me. And everyone is me. I owe whoever's in front of me my love or my acceptance, if you will. And that's having to separate out, again, what I think is right as opposed to just simply what is.
I was, I'm just deciding how deep into this I want to go.
Oh, we gonna go.
No, because this is a whole nother. I feel like my brother here. We can have this conversation, but I don't want to lose the audience.
Right. I get that. And you know what? If they leave, that's fine because they're not used to my podcast yet.
Well, no, I don't want to confuse them. I don't like to confuse people. Just leave them in the wind. So let me see how I can put this. I was just researching some things last night. It's crazy how the universe works. And it was basically talking about the observation of atoms, to make it into simple terms, right? So I don't want to get too deep into that. But in a nutshell, it was saying that everything is made out of the same stuff, even people to the table.
E equals MC squared.
To the microphone stand, right? Which is an interesting concept. And the guy was basically just explaining how you should be kind to everything. The rock, your T-shirt, your car. And I thought about that. You know, the moment people don't treat their cars properly, they start to break down.
Absolutely.
You know, the moment you don't start to pick up after your house starts to fall apart.
Yes.
You know, and he was explaining how even inanimate objects, everything is still alive. Everything is connected. Everything has consciousness, you know.
Yes.
And like my brother was saying, everything is one, essentially.
Yes.
Even down to the dirt on the floor in Buddhism, from what I've discovered about the Buddhists. And I don't know about yogis too much. But that's their principle, is that everything is connected. So, you know, if they sweep the floor, they try to sweep the floor, like you said, in a zone. They try to be the greatest at sweeping floors. You know, if somebody's taking out the trash, they try to master taking out the trash because they understand it's part of the whole picture. It's part of the whole body and stuff, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I like where you're going, my brother.
Exactly.
That's what ancient African spirituality is based on. The fact that God is in everything. So like when I was breaking down the nonviolence and truth telling, I was trying to break into the yamas. When we're talking about having nonviolence to begin with and starting out that way, it is that sense of acceptance of everything and being truthful in all situations. So you're coming with the most open, honorable stance first, right? And so that's part of the spinoff of, you know, being the warrior in the garden and not the gardener in the war. But even being the warrior in the garden, you have to have a place of understanding and acceptance of what's going on right in front of you, whether you are at war or you're in the garden.
I agree 100%.
So I couldn't wait to get y'all two in the same room. I just knew it was just going to be atoms flying. So this is my godfather of yoga. And the reason why I call him my godfather of yoga is I intentionally chose a yoga teacher school that was Black and brown owned and operated. And God would so have it that a friend of mine actually went through their program first, and she went on to practice one aspect of yoga. And I was interested in another aspect, but she was like, you could still go there. And when I started my yoga journey as a teacher, I did not know I was going to experience one of the most serious tragedies of my whole life within the first couple weeks, because I had a family member killed by another family member. And within our first few weeks of me being in this program. And Jay made space for that. Jay made space for me to take my space, but still participate and still be present as much as I could be present. On some days, I was just laying on the floor crying or laying on the floor meditating while they were practicing, but he made space for that. And so we became much more than just teacher-student in my heart. He really became a godfather in a sense. And Black fathers are few and far between, but I have been blessed with many of them. And he's not old enough to be my father. We're only 11 years apart. Like, I don't know your business, but
it's possible.
It is possible. I don't know your business, but
Mom's had me 3 days after she turned 16.
That's wild. I know. My grandmother had their first daughter at 13, but 11 is kind of right. But you know, he definitely was there, supportive, like always prayed over me, always, you know, made space for me. If I couldn't do it because I was just like, I just can't, but I'm going to come to the second half. He was like, just come to the second half. If I had to miss it because I had to go to like 3 funerals in 4 days, he was like, take all the time that you need. And just really made space for me to be part of the journey. And yoga has been it has become my first love. And not for the asanas. Like, everybody sees me do yoga and they're like, oh my God, you're so flexible and it looks so great when you do it. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. But it's more of understanding the philosophy of yoga and putting that to practice in my life in tandem with my foundational spiritual beliefs that are rooted in Christianity, but all things, you know, spiritual, based on spiritual law. Like, understanding yoga off the mat is the thing.
Yes.
In which a lot of people do not get to understand, because it's very hard. When you come to a yoga class, I'm like, lay back, go ahead and we're just going to ground into space. And people want to move, right? And it's like, well, I want to teach you about this art. I want to teach you about the philosophy. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to weave through the podcast as I go to do this podcast journey along with this yoga journey. And so last month, the host that I co-host with, she passed the mic to me a couple of times. And so I got to do a couple solo shows. And so I was like, okay, let me spin off to do First Fridays. And so this is my first planned solo podcast.
Okay.
And we're going to try and do First Fridays, but you were the first person I really wanted to have.
First Friday.
First Friday. And First Friday. So welcome. Thank you. Like I said before, I cannot wait to get into the decolonization of history and the history of yoga, and is yoga for Black people.
It's yoga for Black people.
And so let me give the background on why I titled it that, because I think it's hilarious. What happens to me often, and I mean often, is when I'm standing outside of a yoga class, people will come up to me and say, how's the yoga class here? And I'll say, it's great. I'm the teacher. And they'll be like, oh, really? Because they never expect to see a Black yoga teacher. It's so random to them. Sometimes they'll be in the room and I'll walk past all of them and go to the front, and you can see them look at me like, oh, okay, she must be just grabbing something. Maybe it's the tattoos or whatever, but people never expect me to be the yoga teacher. And I'm like, okay, let's go ahead, lay back and get comfortable on your mat. And then people look so confused, like, what's that Black woman doing up there? We're about to have yoga. Where's the little Asian person or the little white lady or, you know, everyone else we expect to see contextually? What's been your experience with that?
Oh my God.
As a Black man at that, right? Because we all think yoga's just for women to begin with.
Oh man, it's many a times I've walked in to a place like the Sub or something, and you know, people are like, you know, I think the teacher's gonna be there. I'm like, yeah,
That's the teacher spot.
yeah. Like I'm the teacher, but I love it in a sense that for me, you know, I've been a teacher for 12 years now, which
Right.
seems like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But now it's what's advertised, and
Right.
so people kind of come in, and it's, you know, more of like, thank you
Yeah.
for being able to make space for them, so now that we don't feel othered.
Yes.
And so that's been like the great joy of it. And even what I already knew, as when I first started teaching, I lived out in Corona, and I taught at a place called the Yoga Den, and another place called Just Yoga, both in Corona. They're not necessarily friends, but it's where I started.
Right.
It's where I started. I love them. And people would just be like, whoa, and even playing like hip hop and R&B back then was like, what, you know? And so, you know, my class was popular, and I was like, you know, I want to go and do that at home.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, like what the impetus and the spark was to join Green Tree, with what the tree was back 10 years ago.
Right.
This white woman had wanted to come down, and I usually say European Americans, but I don't want to confuse people because I have to explain.
Right.
What I mean when I say European Americans, because I think it's important to break down who we are.
Right.
And when we kind of get into this colorism, we buy into white supremacy without really understanding that our very words are trapping us.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And that's something to learn. That's something to really decolonize.
Yes.
Is to know
our language.
Right. And so, you know, as I'm now with, you know, teaching with these European Americans.
Come on, somebody. Which is usually their preferred title. Like most Caucasian, white, European Americans will correct me and say, hey, I'm just a European American. Great.
It's real because, again, even Caucasian is a lie.
It's systemic.
Like, there is no, you know, I posted this thing on this, one of my, I think maybe D.L. Hughley posted it and whatever, and this white senator is reading this book, and it's really just simply explaining, like, it says white people created this thing called race. and he's like, you know, who believes this? Wouldn't it be better just to read? And he said, like, you know, this Jesus story and whatever. I'd much rather, you know, read that to the kids as opposed to this made up story. And so people are yelling out, you know, well, reality. He said, I don't care about reality. What I care about is that we teach this story. And again, that's the importance of decolonizing, because they're lying straight to our faces.
I was waiting for you to say it.
And we're participating in it.
In the lie, yes.
You know,
yes.
Not really understanding that we've taken on the lie ourselves.
Yes.
And if we don't right our own ship, we'll continue to sink with them.
Come on, somebody.
That's just what it is. Rome is falling.
Yeah.
If you study history,
come on,
you can see again that these people right now are ready to buy into utter hypocrisy and no longer buy into the thing that held the nation together, which was true spiritual principles.
Yeah.
If you read the Constitution and what these Europeans had begun to start getting at, right, which is what their enlightenment truly was now they begin to start now being sparked by the very thing that allowed pyramids to be built. Right? Like, they had not had that before.
Right.
It's important, again, to look at history and know that they were these very impoverished people, and how they got what it is they got was by going around the world instilling knowledge and wealth.
Yes.
And right now they call it the Commonwealth, but you know, I don't get too far into, you know, I'll start going down this rabbit hole.
So do you think, and this is a rabbit hole, so do you think it was the capitalism that drew them into a more look. You already. Go ahead. Well, I don't have to finish the question. Go ahead.
It's not. See, understand that true civilizations got spirituality, And that spirituality is what we, again, will maybe begin to call as philosophy and say yoga, right? Any system that you have, then they got this spirituality that tells them that we are one.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had not bought into that yet.
Okay.
They bought into what Constantine had created was this egoic personality
Yes.
of a god, of a leadership, of a hierarchy,
Yes.
to buy into a pope, emperor, a Caesar, czar, or whatever it is that you want to call it. And in that, greed and egoism had been the driving force of Western civilization.
Okay.
Now, they, again, yes, they did have Plato and they did have philosophy and things like that, but they only held that for the few.
Right.
They did not distribute this knowledge to their people.
Right.
And so when you read about these, even, I was... I was watching this Bridgerton thing where, it's so hard for me to really to watch that. And everybody's like, oh, it's so good. I'm like, but
it's so bad. It's
you're
so wrong.
You're the first person I've heard, because I can't watch it either.
You know what I'm saying?
I turned that shit off. I turned this shit off, man. I can't watch this shit. Got to hear you say that, brother. Go ahead.
Oh, my God. They again try and portray themselves now. They're trying to whitewash it in the sense to say that they had this enlightenment that goes back. And, Shonda Rhimes should be ashamed of herself. I mean her no disrespect. She's a great writer and so on and so forth.
He said what he said.
Participate in the whitewashing of the barbarism of this civilization.
Come on, somebody.
Is to be no different than Clarence Thomas, who we know now is bought out to be a true Uncle Tom. And I'll say that because that is a fact of what anybody understands what an Uncle Tom is.
Well,
we know him to be bought out by a man who worships Hitler.
Yeah.
To have memorabilia of anyone and so on and so forth, to say you just want to remember it, but it ain't a museum. It ain't open up to the public. It's just for you, bruh.
Bruh.
Stop it. Stop it. And so, they again would want to try and portray that they had this sense of this enlightenment before the 1700s. Mm-hmm. And that's just not true. Mm-hmm. And so they went around the world stealing, raping, pillaging, being the Vikings that they were. Mm-hmm. This is who they were. This is the people and whatever they was designed to be going around being, again, who Rome called the the barbarians. Mm-hmm. That they were, again, while everyone else was living in civilization, brotherhood, they were being barbarous to each other. Mm-hmm. All the way up until the 1700s. And again, they still were even then. Right. It's just now they begin to start talking against it. Yes. As opposed to just accepting it as just the way it was.
Yes.
Right? That some people just deserved it and so on and so forth. And so when you say racism and the creation of now this division, they are the ones who create this division so that they could again uphold this power, this egoism that they were now trying to bring into science that nobody else had brought in. No. Right? Other people understood that they were just regional. But now here they were with their pseudoscience and believing it. And so while hand in hand, they have upheld science, they've also upheld pseudoscience. So they've upheld hypocrisy along with reason.
Well, the only way to get people to believe a lie is to put a little bit of the truth in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you have to sprinkle a little bit of truth so people will say, oh, well, that might be true because this and this and this part is true.
Right. The earth is flat.
Right. We have to go discover this country that already has people.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And now they're actually fighting against the age of reason that was sparked by what this nation is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So we don't even understand that we need to be standing up for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, of what this nation actually is founded on, which is African spiritual principles.
It is.
Right? To understand that we are all one, I can point out the Mayans who understood that because they welcomed them in. They weren't like, what is this? They were like, hey, come on, brothers and whatnot. The Africans welcomed them in. You know, the Chinese welcomed, everyone welcomed them in, and they behaved in an egoic fashion.
Yeah.
And when we talk about, again, true religion, spirituality, and you talk about a God and a devil, then a God is in your behavior and a devil is in your behavior. There's a positive and there's a negative.
Yes.
If you are acting in a negative fashion, then you are devilish.
Yes.
You are coming from an evil perspective.
Yes.
And so again, when I'm against you, I'm evil, right? But when I understand your misguidedness, right? Now, I'm not against European Americans. I'm against white separatism.
Yes.
And I'm against black separatism.
Okay.
Because it's all the same damn thing.
Right.
A so-called black man and a so-called white woman can get together and have a baby. A dog and a cat can't get together and have a cog.
Come on.
It don't happen.
It don't work.
Right? And so to talk about us as these separate things, again, is what they want.
Right.
So that you could have this imbalance that you see today.
And dissension.
Right? And they ready to go to war. They arming them. We don't understand that if there's no arming us to like combat this.
No.
We're only 8% of this population.
Yeah.
And so if we don't fight this from a philosophical, from a mental yoga standpoint, then we are doomed to fail here.
Right.
Right? Unless, again, we enlist the nation that is the continent that is the richest continent on the face of the earth. That, again, because it buys into this same whatever,
Right.
they are subservient.
They have the same dissension that we do.
Yeah. Right. And they trying to do the same thing within South Africa.
Yes.
Right. It's like,
Apartheid.
okay.
Yep.
It's all good.
Right.
You could be, president and whatever. Yeah, we still gonna hold all the power.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
How y'all still hold all the power, and now we understood that how you got all the power was through this.
Right. There's no way of gathering it back the same way. You have to rise above it from a higher perspective to gain back true power. And so true power is in understanding our full history. And so it's interesting to me, like I went to a yin yoga class, not this past weekend, weekend before, and they were talking about, the yin yoga perspective, which is a Chinese understanding, right, of something that people inherently believe to be Indian by nature, right? So they have this blending, and the lady who taught it was a very, very sweet, kind lady. And when she brought up chakras, she basically like dismissed it and said she wasn't going to talk about it at all because it doesn't resonate with her.
Excuse me.
And I understand, right? I'm going to give my disclaimer. I understand a lot of things that I understand and believe. Other people may not have reached that part of reasoning and understanding and belief. So what you have not accepted because of whatever reason, that is completely on you. And I am no way demonizing or minimizing each person for where they are. But to say that you don't believe in chakras to me is to say that you don't believe in your own endocrine system, because it is lined up and it is the ancient perspective and understanding of our own endocrine system, which is systems that actually spin in our body and control our whole essence. Right? And before I even got to yoga, and that was part of the reason I just absolutely loved your whole take on it, I understood that to be ancient African philosophy that had been attributed to other people. Okay. So with that being said, how much of yogic history? Yeah, I'm gonna start.
Well,
I'm gonna start.
I'm
gonna start.
Let's break that down and
Come on.
continue it from an understanding. One, knowledge lies in everyone.
Yes.
And so it is not to say that only a certain people have access to this knowledge. We get to see people actually show this knowledge within their civilization.
Right.
If you go back now to Kemet,
Mm-hmm.
and you begin to read the Book of the Dead, as white people would call it. It's the book of the going forth by day, as humanity should be calling it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand that, then what they're trying to tell you is to be from this enlightened perspective, to basically be good to all things.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 42 confessions that you have to make, 42 negative confessions to say that I haven't done these 42 negative things in my life, right? We're just saying 10 negative things within the yamas and niyamas in our understanding of yoga today.
Right.
While within Kemet, they had to understand 42. And then when you can read those and see that within today's Christianity, 10 of them look just like what they call the 10 Commandments.
Come on, somebody.
And so you can go back and see this philosophy for every ancient civilization that has existed.
Yes.
That you can't have a civilization, meaning a group of people able to come together and live in a very tight space in these new ways, not spread all out.
Right.
This is the new thing for us to live in very
in
tight
community,
areas.
in areas.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I love about the monoliths and studying the ancient monoliths, right? Because these are the things that we can't even understand how they were built. And they are spread out. And like the oldest one is Göbekli Tepe, right? I'm saying it wrong, but whatever. But they see some of the same hieroglyphics as they see in Egypt. Even though these are continents apart, right? And you see some of the same remnants, even though these communities were far away from each other. And they didn't have cell phones and text messages and all these things to share what all of them inherently knew.
Well, again, that's an assumption. Again,
that they didn't have text messages?
Well, that they didn't
know each other?
That it was so huge of a space now that they could not communicate.
Oh,
that
fair.
They could not actually travel across the shared ocean or whatever.
Fair.
That people could not have reached a height of a civilization and then let it go, because we kind of see what happens to be able to do this unnatural thing. So people were like, why wouldn't they have more advanced civilizations in other places? Well, because it's perverted. It's actually not a natural thing, and that a natural way of living always causes problems for the area, if you will. You see again within Mayan civilizations of them falling and rising. You see it happening everywhere in a sense to where it's not something that I believe can be sustained in the way that it is unless there is a more shared spirituality. And because we are still driven, I think, as individuals to constantly create and push that what may work for you may not work for me. And that competition of what we may be calling capitalism is a natural thing.
Right.
But we don't participate in a capitalist society. I will, again, make that clear when we're talking about Western society.
Right.
We're existing in a greed-driven society.
Fair.
Fair,
and there is a difference.
A difference.
There is a nuance difference.
Right. When you claim an industrial age, when truly you're just perverting everything that you touch. And so it was an industrial thing to now take people from one land to another land in a way that had never been done before.
Right.
Right. Again, they said, "Oh, slavery existed in the Bible." And
not the same. It was not
chattel slavery is a new perverted thing on the face of the planet, much like genocide is.
Yes.
And so these are both Western creations. And again, it's important to know that we're not talking about capitalism, because capitalism, any ism, again, just within reason, needs the counterbalance to it.
Right.
So capitalism needs socialism.
Yes.
Socialism needs capitalism.
Yes.
When you have the unbalance, now there's the perversion.
Right.
And so you see within these Western civilizations, they call themselves socialists, but they're truly unbalanced.
Right.
And they don't have that true capitalism, that true competition.
Right.
Right. And then on the other side, they call it competition when it's just all greed and pillaging.
Right.
Company to company. What we were supposed to be against in the sense of monopolies.
Right.
We see that now everything's a monopoly.
Yes.
So I always want to like correct it. Everything can be seen in reason.
Right.
If we really sat back and now just stop the bullshit. I don't know.
Yes, we can.
Yes,
we can say it. Stop the bullshit.
But
yes, we can.
If you're allowing people again to be on the news saying, "Oh, we're a white person and a black person," that's bullshit.
Yeah.
But here they are talking in anti-reason, in hypocrisy, and we wonder why people don't know that they're being programmed by the very same thing that we learned about as propaganda. I've read in school about propaganda and what Hitler was doing in a sense to brainwash, if you will, the people of Germany,
right.
To allow him to continue to do what he was doing, because again he was able to just put out this certain message, and this is what they're fighting against in the sense with Fox News and the whole right-wing media. They don't want the fairness doctrine to ever be reintroduced. Now, I'm 50 years old. I'm old enough to understand that there was this law back when the great Ronald Reagan, who they love to champion, comes in and deregulates all these things.
Okay.
And they deregulate radio in a way to where they do away with reason. Because everything has opposites. Here we're back to yoga. This is the yogic understanding that everyone has come to, right? The Pharaoh understood that within reason, the people got to do good in order for him to do good. Right. He couldn't just be. And whenever he did that, then there went the imbalance of the society. And I done got off of my point in the sense of thinking about the Pharaoh, because it makes me want to go back.
It's all right. You go on tangents.
Talking about
just
reason,
circle it back in.
But talking about reason in radio is that when they did away with this law of the fairness doctrine, which meant that when you presented something in commentary, then the counter view had to be presented. It had to be. You couldn't allow a Rush Limbaugh to get out there and just spew bullshit.
Oh, we have that now.
You couldn't allow Fox News to be out there and just spread bullshit.
Yeah.
And so this is the rise of what we see as right-wing radio or lie-wing radio. It's their straight line to these people to such an extent to where they've been proven to be lying. And they're like, no. They're creating their own bubble. And again, I have friends, white friends live in Oklahoma, right? Stayed at their house and whatever. They treated me like family. You know, I love these people and whatever, but they live in this lie. And, you know, if we continue to accept it and just like, oh, no, it's politics. It is not politics.
It's not.
It is evil. They know it within their own Christianity, right? The Antichrist. Well, if Trump ain't the definition of an Antichrist, I don't know what is. But I remember them all swearing, these same evangelical Christians saying that Obama was an Antichrist. Oh, he has to be. It's like, well, that's based again on your teachings.
Right.
That's not based on your own readings.
Right.
And getting back to yoga and getting back to reason again.
I've never seen Nick smile so much during a podcast that he hasn't said much yet.
You know, I'm enjoying listening to the brother talk, and just a lot of things. I don't like to confuse people.
Yeah.
So a lot of things you're saying, I'm in tune with. It's just like I just don't want to
lose.
A lot of times I have this conversation with people, then I realize midway in the conversation, like, oh shit, I need to start way back.
Yeah.
With the definitions.
Well,
okay, so this is my thing. And I know Danny will sometimes I'll say something. She'll be like, well, now you have to say what that means. And yes, that may be true. But I feel like this is going to be available on YouTube. If they need to rewind it and look something up,
that is true.
Let it be something that leads someone to some greater understanding. So if you have a tangent to jump on it now.
Well,
no, I'm enjoying it. Go ahead.
well, let's understand, right, that everything has opposites.
Yes.
This is what we will speak about as the observable truth.
Yes.
And for me, there's a difference between God's work and God's word, as I've been raised in Christianity.
Yes.
Right? God's work is something that you can't argue.
Right.
You can observe it for yourself. This is what we call science.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? You should be able to break it down.
Science is what man has created to try and define and understand God what God has done.
It is just the observation of God's work.
Absolutely.
All you do is just sit here and look at God's great work.
But we try and recreate it, right? That's the scientific method.
Well, the scientific method is that I should be able to, if I make a statement,
right?
If I say that this should be able to happen, then I should be able to take my experiment and give it to you.
Right.
And now you should be able to experiment and be able to observe that for yourself.
Yes.
That's the scientific method.
Yes.
Right? It's not recreating. It's simply being able to observe this truth within
these
the
confines.
Observable truth. And now me able to say, this is what I believe here.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to go without any interference from me.
Right.
And
Very
observe
true.
this truth. That this, for me, again, is what the scientific method is.
Okay.
You observing God's work.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't observe it for yourself and whatever, then again, I don't believe any damn thing I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm fallible.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's the scientific method.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of that for me, again, is that's what they're against today. Don't believe your own eyes is what they are promoting.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's easy for me to get in. But what we're talking about is what we see is simple opposites within everything.
Yes.
Nothing exists without an opposite. Everything, right, has a push, a pull, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to know that whatever it is that you may think is right, somebody is going to think is wrong.
Fair.
There is never going to be this one way.
Right.
And this is what has been argued about, right? That within what we observe, there is a wave and a point. And so there's the argument to say, well, are everything basically made up of points, or is everything made up of waves? It's like, well, it's made up of both.
Right.
It's the very same thing. Again, it's our bodies
Right.
looking at this.
Right.
We actually don't get all the light.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get all the infrared and so you don't hear all the different sounds. And so
right.
it's important for us to always be able to say some things and now give you that of what I have said, and for you to go find it for yourself. And when you find now people saying, okay, this is what I observed for me, this is what I'm going to try and write down and give to other people.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we see within all of holy scriptures.
Right.
People have observed something that they know that is nothing that they can point out to you. And so they have to now try and write it in these more philosophical, these deep ways in order for you to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be willing to go beyond what is just the ego, right? The ego is, again, everything that I've recorded in this brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that's what I know. The spirit is when you recognize, like, this is so much more that I do not know, right? What the hell I do not know. Not just what I know, but the fact that there's what I do not know. Again, back to the scientific method. Every scientist will always say, hey, shit.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this, is this hard theory, I have to say, I don't know. There could be something newly discovered.
Right.
Right. And so this is what ancient scriptures are.
Right.
Is people's own revelations, their own account of what it is that they have observed.
Right.
And they're trying to say that you can observe this for yourself. And so these, again, from what you read in yogic texts of what we would come from the Hindu line of things.
Right.
They are saying that everybody has their yogic text. Everyone has their holy scriptures.
Yes.
And now everyone is a yogi.
Right.
Again, this is the philosophy, not the religion.
Right.
There's that difference.
Right. Please make that delineation because yogic philosophy is different than yogic religion.
Right. Or Hinduism.
Or Hinduism,
right? Like,
which
yoga
would be...
is supposed to be the philosophy.
Yes.
And then the Hinduism, even when you get into Hinduism, you get that more white supremacy has more condensed these people's different understandings into what they could now try and consume.
Come on, somebody.
Not in a sense of what was their own cultural understanding of Punjabs and different cultures that existed in this area that they wanted to control.
Right.
And so when you get that, again, everyone is saying that same thing. Oh, wait, everyone is under the eye of Ra, if you will, the light coming from Kemet,
right.
if you will. And everyone is saying the same thing. So yoga, for me, when you go and begin to study your own history, your own cultural history, you'll find everyone with this spiritual understanding. And the difference between spirituality and religion is egoic, religion is language, and spirituality is spiritual.
Yes.
Spirituality is meaning.
Yes.
Right? So I can say I love you, and that's just that language.
Right.
Right, but the meaning of I love you in the sense of my actions, of how I treat you, now there is that spiritual aspect of it, that deeper. And so most people are lost in the sense of thinking one side, oh, one day I'm going to get to this place where everything is good. You're already in a place where everything is good.
Right.
But you believe in a place where everything is bad.
Right.
And so you, again, are making the life in front of you.
Right.
If I'm treating shit as bad, treating people as whatever, then my consequences are going to be bad.
Right, because that's what I'm conditioning myself to look for and to experience.
All around me.
Yeah.
And so this, again, is the golden rule of the secret, again, of what yoga is actually in any philosophy is trying to explain.
Right.
That you're the one creating.
Yeah.
Right? In the sense of you're observing atoms.
Yes.
You're collapsing your life into being. The hard part of that is that so many people believe in God and the devil outside of them.
Right. That
they can't find the God or the devil inside of them.
Right.
And there, I think, is a friend of mine who's a Christian would always say to me is more of a kind of backhand things, like when he would say that the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was to tell people that he don't exist. And I would be like, well, what? Because I say that I don't believe in some man with a tail and whatever. But again, what I understand is like, well, the devil's in you.
Right.
And so when you don't understand that the devil's in you, when it's simply those people's fault, as opposed to seeing that those are citizens of this nation, and thereby that's the consequence or the outcome of being a citizen of this nation. To say that it's the fault of the citizens is sort of ridiculous, because you come up in a nation that's going to teach you how to, in a sense, get everything it is that you want to get. And if the nation feels like it has absolutely nothing to do with it, cares nothing about you, then that's against every civilization that I've ever read about.
Right.
Every one of them has believed in taking care of their citizens. They don't talk about chattel slavery or just doing folks in this, horrific way. Yeah. Right. It don't happen. But they'll tell you. Hey, I'm not saying that wars have not happened. Right. I'm not saying that destruction has not happened. But what I'm saying is that there was understanding of cultures, of welcoming in, of seeing people within this brotherhood, that today we want to all be in our castles.
Yes.
We all want to be European kings and queens, living up in our castle, having all our shit, as opposed to getting that, it's about community. It's more about us hanging out and being with one another than it is having, having shit.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna talk about my clothes that I got on. I'm being sponsored by a corporation right now.
We'll tap in on the sponsors later, but we saw you riding on your chariot.
But I don't buy. I try not to. I've never chased money, which was like a thing I hadn't got. I never chased money. I had I think the privilege. I'll always say I had the privilege of having a big family that always gave me this sense that I could do more, that I could push and be more.
Yeah.
And so in that, I had the fortune just to kind of look around and pick the life that I wanted, right? My uncle who, again, I'm South Central LA. I slang dope, I gang banged and whatever. And as I knew that I did not want to do that anymore, I looked around and I pulled what I had off the shelf. I had an uncle who joined the army and he had a little money. He had, he was doing all right. So, I went and joined the army. And then I wanted to get into doing computers and whatever. That was just sort of my hobby. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just go for it. It's, going to be some money. And boom, I wind up, getting up to this executive level. And it's through my own life, through observing my own life, that I've been able to recognize that I got the good and the bad in my life, that I was the one responsible, that the bad shit that was happening and so on, so the shit I was losing and the arguments I was getting into and whatever, like I was calling that in. And at the same time, I was calling in this success. But for me, I was just pushing, just doing, again, from a time of where the Black culture was, go do well for us.
Right.
Right. Not go do well for you.
Right.
It was go do well for us.
Right.
Right. You representing us.
Yes.
And so you never necessarily felt like you was just out there. And because I'm working out in Orange County, which is, one of the richest stretches of land in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm one of the only ones out there.
Right.
And I know who I'm representing.
Right.
Right. And because I see them grabbing they whatever. And the thing that got me was, that's their own fear. That's their own thing. Like they want to be me.
Absolutely.
And when I understood that, and that was how I walked around Orange County. I mean, I got free tables. I got free drinks. People welcome me, and they thought I was some celebrity and whatever. My white friend from Oklahoma would be like, "Well, why is everybody treating you like this?"
Because you're carrying yourself like that. Because
I was carrying myself in this way of where I knew I was the shit. Because hip hop again had, in 2000s or whatever, hip hop was just like, it ruled the world.
Yeah.
And I'm, born and raised from that, like my people I hung out with, shout out to Sir Jinx, who is the creator of Ice Cube's great sound of Death Certificate and so on and so forth. Great producer, Dr. Dre. Again, his mother was friends with our family. And so my cousin, who is no longer here, rest in peace, B. Again, hip hop was our thing.
Yeah.
It
was our
wasn't
voice.
This corporate mess that it is today.
Yeah, it was our voice.
It was actually coming from our streets, right? That now I knew that I was the shit.
Yeah.
And I walked around and I was making money that I didn't expect to make. And life moved in a way I just did not know.
Yeah.
And that is what really got me into saying, well, what the hell is this? Because I was an atheist before that time. And I know I'm just probably going off here.
Keep going.
It's so much to have
Keep
to
going.
Explain of how deep it is to have to really start stripping down your ego.
Yeah.
To really start having to get how responsible for your life you are.
Yes.
I was, I'm standing at the beach and I was on a phone call and they were telling me I was going to get another $20,000.
Okay.
Now, rewind that because it's just 3 days. It's just at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My buddy James had just whooped our boss's ass.
Physically?
Physically. And Costa Mesa, there's a Barnes & Noble in Costa Mesa.
Wait a minute. That took a turn I wasn't expecting.
Oh, my God. It was just what a good day it was.
James had just whooped the boss whole ass.
He just whoops his ass in the middle of Barnes & Noble, crowded Barnes & Noble and shit and whatever. Craig Dewar, shout out to you if you're still out there.
Shout out to Craig.
And my man James Lane. Yeah.
Wow.
He got James fired. We went out, smoked some weed, 2-hour lunch, come back and whatever. And James gets fired because our boss hated on us. And so, that was who he was, this petty dude. That was his consequence of James whooping his ass.
Okay.
And so I'm sitting out
Shout
there.
out to being able to whoop the boss that just fired you for smoking weed for the 2-hour break.
He fired James because we were like, they couldn't get us for smoking weed.
Oh.
That was just who we were.
Well.
What he did was James, computer talk here. When you create a program or something for a company, right? Like that belongs to that company.
Right.
But when you've created it, now you can do it. It's also something that you could tell another company that you're able to do.
Right.
And so James emailed someone's work, even though he stripped out all the proprietary information, and he emailed it to somebody. And so that's thought of as thievery, if you will.
Yes.
And so
conflict of interest.
Right. And so Craig, who's watching us, sees something and gets in fire, and he deserved it. He deserved it. That's what I said.
So I know. I'm sorry. I went down the wrong rabbit hole. You were talking about someone called you and said they had 20 bands for you.
Well, at the end of all that, then I got my raise. And I'm sitting here like, wow. Like, shit. Like, how is life happening like this for me? Like, wait a minute. Like, this can't be so. And life has been unfolding like that for me. And as I had a cousin again who was still doing those same things that I was doing, who was not now running with me. All throughout my life, we had run together. We had, did everything in the streets and whatever. And so I had always seen my life with Brian. And one day, we were just hanging out, and he introduces me to the old 40s. This is the Crips that we started back in the 80s. And like, he's an OG and whatever. And we sitting there, and he's like, man, I don't want to do this no more. I want to do what you doing. And I was like, I didn't have no words. I had, like, in a sense of what my man is explaining, that you could be able to understand things from a certain level, and that kind of go over people's heads. And so I did not have the words to be able to explain to him what it was that I was doing. Like, just for me, it'd have been like, man, I was just being full of myself. It was just like, I thought I was the shit.
Right.
It would come off just as this egoic thing. And whatever.
But it was deeper than that. But you didn't know how to explain it at that point.
Right.
I understand that.
And so he shot and killed like a year later.
Wow.
And that just devastated me. Because I knew that, hey, it's like Vader saying, he saw some light and wanted to now, take off his mask and whatever. And B was, again, if somebody was going to do something to me and whatever, you had to watch out for him. Now, don't get me wrong, I still got uncles. But like B was the enforcer. That was, and he was just angry for so many different reasons. But when he's taken out, that really made me say, well, what the hell? Like, damn, I didn't necessarily have the words, and I'm beginning to realize that I have this say over my life. And, as I'm beginning to realize that this is like The Secret and stuff is starting to come out. And What the Bleep Do You Know? These some great documentaries that you should watch. Now, Secret, be careful. It could be... they give you just the cake or the icing of it. Right. It's easy to say that you could think your way to whatever, but
it's deeper than that.
It's deeper than that.
It's more than that.
Well, because if you can get anything in life that you want, but if you get it through your force,
right,
then your consequence is gonna be different than what you expected.
It is.
They had these women on the Bling Ring and whatever, and they was talking about how they was using The Secret. And the day that they finally got the thing that they wanted, the police showed up to arrest them for burglary, for ripping off Paris Hilton and all these people.
Right.
And so, that's the part of this yoga, of this practice.
Yes.
That is something that you always have to do, that I always have to be looking for that ego.
Yes.
And this is basically that story of my cousin is now what began to really have me start to understand what this was. And so now even, understanding what Christianity was, because I'd only been taught the religion, never the spiritual aspect of it, and, there's spiritual, there's truth in it. And then there's
the religion part of it. the religiosity of Christianity.
Right. That's so clear today.
The Western historical religiosity of Christianity, which once I went to Israel and I got to put the context with the biblical text, to understand where these people were speaking from as a culture to create these 66 books that Western culture has adopted and imprinted their own history onto. It changed how I looked at the philosophy of Christianity. And once I started to challenge the philosophy and weigh it to spiritual law, and spiritual law is consistent through majority of religions. And once you understand spiritual law and then you pair it with the yogic philosophy, it brings out a deeper understanding of how to dance this dance.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. How to dance this dance. And that, I think, has been my natural thing in a sense of where I could lose myself in the moment, right? In the sense of what that being a yogi is, right? Because everyone is a yogi, they just don't recognize it. You could find yourself in the zone in anything.
Right.
And, there's moments of where I would dance and I would just be in the zone. I'd come back and people were like, well, damn, what did you just do? I'm like, well, what?
I don't
know.
Right. I don't know.
Just having some fun,
Exactly.
And it's the same thing for me as like when I start running my mouth. Like, to talk about spirituality, I just we get in the zone. Yeah, I do it all damn, which I basically do.
Nick, can we open up the phone lines? I know we got some questions in the chat. I know David just asked, and any input on Tai Chi? I have not studied Tai Chi yet. I understand it to be how to move energy throughout the body, and I understand very high level that it is the same similar meridians that we use for energetic fields for Reiki and acupuncture. That's the totality I know of Tai Chi, but I have not dived into it just yet.
Yeah, I am not a Tai Chi individual, so I really couldn't give you that history in a sense. One, what you find is that there are all practices that, again, for me, Tai Chi is still yoga. Martial arts, if you will, Kung Fu, these are still forms of yoga, of focusing and harnessing your energy. Right? Like, and Tai Chi is, again, that same thing of focusing that energy.
Yes.
And so, when I call myself a yogi, I'm not here to appropriate someone else's culture.
Right.
Have to sit here in a sari or
right.
All these different things where I see some of my European yogis
cohorts
may feel that they need to do. My thing was to get to more of that history or that spirituality, to be able to get to that point of where even when you understand yoga, if we can really get in and talk about the history of yoga, right, is that there's different periods that are attributed to yoga. It is not as if yoga was just like created one day and, boom, there it was.
Right.
Truly, when you go back, when you just go back to the 1900s, you find that vinyasa flow is more British gymnastics.
Right.
Now intertwined with yogic philosophy.
Right.
Because they wanted to build up their warriors in India to be able to fight back against what the colonizers were doing.
Right.
And so now they're beginning to take their own aerobics and things to build their own bodies up to be able to fight back. And when you understand that Gandhi uses ahimsa to actually whoop the English's ass, if you will, without having to throw a punch.
To move.
Right, again, this is harnessing one's energy.
Now, I will ask for you to break down ahimsa, because we have not broke down the ahimsa. 8 limbs.
Ahimsa. Well, it's big, definitely within, say, is yoga for Black people.
Yes.
It is through this use of ahimsa or nonviolence that we've been able to have the biggest impact on this society, if you will.
Yes.
Right? So nonviolence is exactly what we come back full circle of what Nick was saying earlier, is that you want to treat everything around you with love.
Right.
You want to, not be abusive to those things around you. And so understanding that.
Nick, I just sent you the 8 limbs of yoga.
Understanding that is huge because it means that I no longer attack white people.
Mm-hmm.
I attack white hypocrisy.
Okay.
And now I leave my European American friends alone. But for those who want to stand on white hypocrisy,
right,
then, we can have words.
Yes.
Right? Not anything hateful, because I understand that you are simply, again, as a computer geek, programmed
yes.
with misinformation.
Yes. Yes.
And so I have the patience
mm-hmm.
to go back and forth with you and help deprogram you if you are open
right.
to truly having dialogue. And I've
right.
exposed more people who aren't open.
Right.
But the beauty of that is that there are the people who are watching that conversation that get the true information and now are able to disseminate between mud and clean water for themselves.
Come on, somebody.
That's, why we want to come from that place of ahimsa.
Right.
Because it means that I need to understand my enemy.
Yes.
Right? Not attack
and understand,
them.
Going back to what you said, you're not truly my enemy. You're just misinformed.
Right.
And that's okay. And if you're open, like the Bible says, if they have ears to hear, let them hear. And if they don't, that's okay too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's okay too. I have the privilege of standing in the gap and working for Fuller Theological Seminary, which is an old Christian institution. Seminary, for those of you who don't know, is usually the graduate level institution where people go to get Masters of Divinity, which is usually like the pastor's masters. D-Min is a doctorate of ministry. And also psychology degrees. But if people want to go to do psychology with a Christian foundation, they go to a seminary oftentimes. And so I work for a seminary, and I work heavily with a professor who has intentioned herself to help people understand social location and how their social location and where they were brought up and the things that they were conditioned to understand have a lot to do with how they see their spirituality and religion and how they experience God, and how by broadening that perspective and understanding other people's contexts and social location and come froms helps broaden how we see God. Mm. And I get to do this as a Black woman, which are few and far between in these institutions, which means I get to talk to our European Americans about being white and what that means. Mm. I don't have as much patience. So I tend to have these conversations when I'm being paid for it. That is my caveat. Because if I'm going to talk to you about this, I'm going to want to get paid. But I'm excited to bring you along for the ride to share like how much study and research that you've done on history, because I'm often asked about history and I'm like, boy, I can't wait to get J. Cole on the show because he's just going to go on a historical tangent and y'all just ain't even ready, because it's what you love.
It is. It
and
is.
If you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I get paid to explain this to everyone, basically, which is, again, of where originally it started off wanting to explain to my family. Now it's an understanding like, who ain't my family? Right. And so, I mean, there's so many aspects of history to even talk about. I think that there is the stories, then there is the science of what you have to be able to again, observe, right? And so it's like, when I first got into yoga, I had a yoga teacher, one of my first yoga teachers, she would say, this stuff is 20,000 years old. It's like 50,000 years old. I'm like, wow, 50,000 years, 20,000 years old. I'm like, wow, oh. And then the more I started listening to her, the more I got, she was just, just saying whatever. Mm-hmm, it really had no foundation to it, right? Like, she'd go through the chakras, and one day it's this color, the other day it's that other color. And I'm like, Now, again, I ain't gonna knock her.
She was doing the best of what she had at the time.
Her motto was fake it till you make it.
Right.
And she, she lived up to her word. And so it made me, it made me want to dig in deeper, to know, like, wait, what are we even talking about here? And so, one, to even understand the history of civilizations,
Right.
like there is that study, right?
Mhm.
Like I first saw a timeline of civilizations, and that blew my mind.
I wish I had your timeline that you put up in
Oh
class,
my,
but I didn't ask for
oh
it
my
in
God,
advance.
to see the fact that it was like this rainbow of civilizations that were all existing at the same time,
Mhm.
not as if, again, just these are over here and they were over there and blah blah blah. Now what you find out that there's a world civilization that they call the Bronze Age,
Mhm.
that they were trading with one
Mhm.
another from China all the way over to Africa, and then within the mummies they've got cocaine and tobacco and whatever.
Mhm.
And again, so they had access to the South America, and so again, you start finding out that wait,
Mhm.
this whole 6,000-year-old story that I was told
Mhm.
is a complete lie.
Yep.
And again, I think as African Americans, I call myself as someone descended from Africa, but I'm damn sure an American because
Right.
I've been in here, right? And I make that distinction because black tells you nothing, as John Henrik Clarke would say.
It doesn't.
It tells you absolutely nothing. And it tries to reduce us to just these colors and not see what, again, science or the observable truth says, which is that everybody's African.
Yes.
Everybody came from the same place and now
Yes.
just populated the world
Whole world.
and now adapted to that part of the world,
Yes.
right? Tall, skinny, short, whatever you want to get into and whatever. The beauty of this, again, of that personal responsibility is that we shape our actual bodies and lives based on what is around us, how we're reacting to it.
And how what we believe about it is actually true. So going back to your point about your friend who was conditioned to see darkness and bad, like when you think your life is bad or sad, it is so because that's what you've ascribed to.
Yes. And some of us could be addicted to sadness,
Yes.
to that one side of things.
Yes.
And it's one, I always say never to judge someone for their sadness. It's always I say make them aware that, hey, yep, I get you're sad.
Mm-hmm.
We all get to be sad, but you don't get to stay there.
Right.
Right? Understand, like, if you want to take this time, I'll give you that time.
Right.
But you don't get to stay there.
Right.
Right? Like, we all deserve our opportunity to lay down,
Mm-hmm.
to take that break, to do what we need to actually be our best.
Mm-hmm.
Being our best may mean taking a goddamn break.
That was me yesterday. Listen, I had a migraine from Tuesday to Thursday morning. By Thursday morning, I was like, well, guess what? I'm not doing anything because if I push through one more day, I am going to be sick. But I have to listen to my body because I am a spiritual being having a physical experience and I am bound by this physical body in ways. And this is one way that I have to acknowledge. It's like having to go to the bathroom. You want to know if mind is over matter? Hold it a little too long and let your body tell you that it needs a release. Because your body will take that release whether you are ready or not. You just have to wait long enough.
You gotta listen to yourself.
You have to listen to your body.
That is what yoga
but
is.
as a function, I'm conditioned for overproductivity. And so it has taken me a long time to, learn.
Acknowledge your Americanness.
Right. Acknowledge my Americanness, my Mamie figure-ness, right? As being a black woman, we are often conditioned to care for and take care of everyone else but ourselves and dismiss what's going on in our body. And that has created a lot of ailments for our people and of color and women of color specifically. But that being said, taking the time and getting on my mat, and that's what I was talking about, yoga on and off the mat, getting on my mat and saying, listen to your body. Where do you feel it? Where does your body need attention? Where does your mind need attention? Where do you need to just breathe?
Mm-hmm.
And that aspect of yoga, of just having that conscious breathing.
Yeah.
Having the self-study, not just to study and show yourself approved as far as understanding your history, but your self-study and studying your own self.
Yes.
And understanding your body and what it needs, and your soul and what it needs in that time.
Right. And I think that's almost what the study of history almost is for people, is what is my my floor, if you will, what is my understanding. And it took me to have to go into one, research religion, or actually let me say research Christianity, because once I think I started researching Christianity, then that made me have to start now researching actual, like, European history, because I was like, wait, so what are they saying here? And now to even understand legends,
right?
That there's so much of what you were saying of what is that white Christian view, is that so much of it is tied into to myth, to legend, to religion, to history, that it's easy to fall into traps of where you could be called an anti-Semite,
right,
because you are now simply trying to say, well, these people could be Semitic or so on and so forth. So you have to really, again, you don't want to fall into these traps of a Nick Cannon, where these brothers get into like pseudoscience. And nothing against Nick Cannon and whatever, or brothers who want to get into black supremacy, but that's what, again, you start falling into when you start not having a floor of what is historical.
right.
What can we all agree on in the sense of floor? And they've done a lot of work to go back to now look at, again, the study of civilizations, the study of the climate, right? To understand the study of the climate is to understand the migration of humanity.
Yes.
What has actually moved the seeds and the people and the animals around the planet is the seasons.
Right.
We move according to that. And so when you begin to see droughts and so on and so forth, and you go back and find 10,000 years ago, there was this major change within the climate. And there is where we begin to start seeing civilizations really begin to come together in this different way. And again, this is within archaeology. This is something that we can see that they've written on the rocks. Some of the first paintings that you see are in the Sahara Desert that show that it wasn't a desert at a time, where people actually were out there farming and taking care of elephants and cattle and sheep and all kind of different things. And so when you get back and you start seeing like, oh, wait a minute, right? So maybe when the Sahara dries up, these people migrated and they start populating the last bit of strip of land that still had great fertile land, which was the Nile Delta. Maybe they could have started to come and inhabit that as opposed to aliens. Right? But again, no, it might have to be aliens. But we see these people had their own understanding of falcons, Horus, this, this connection to the sun god and so forth, that these people had their own understandings. And we can see the actual flow of knowledge. And so anyone can now go back and begin to even start to see what European Americans have dug up. And now what white people are trying to cover up. This is what they don't want you to read anymore in the textbooks. They don't want you to actually understand that there wasn't just this certain tribe of people.
Well, we separate everything that we learn in Western philosophy, right? So we had a conversation the other night on the top of a hill with my hiking group. Some ladies and I were talking about the lunar cycle, and one is a nurse, and she said, she heard that more babies are born on a full moon than any other time. And I said, well, our menstrual cycle is based on a lunar cycle. And if we understand how much the lunar cycle has to do with the historical calendars of ancient civilizations, because that's what they had to judge things on. Like when you're talking about climate, our lunar and solar calendars are what drive a lot of the cycles of our life. But we don't learn that. We learn that periods are every 25 to 28 days. Well, so are the lunar cycles. So are the natural currents in the ocean. So if we continue to like separate what aspects of life are actually connected, we can't see the whole picture.
Well, we did understand that. That was like, again, you see, the Mayans had
Yeah,
these great
we did, but we like the story now is that we have control over those things, right?
so called, yeah. Well, again, the lie, yes.
The lie. That's the lie.
The perversion again, the dominion, the
Yes.
fundamentalism of what we call Christianity today tells us that we can live in a perverted way.
Yes.
That you could have dominion over the planet and do as you will. When everyone knew, again, from farmers, because everybody had to farm, that you couldn't just mess over the earth. You couldn't just whatever. And so you have today factory farms, all these people doing very rotten things to the planet, and it's reacting.
Mm-hmm.
Getting off topic here, but talking about the perversion of what this dominion has allowed in the sense of the Industrial Revolution, of slavery, of genocide, of these people have believed that they could just do whatever and have absolutely no consequences for.
Right.
Right. This is the perversion you see of, again, why I wanted to make that distinction of an egoic society,
Yes.
A one-way society that would tell us that everything's linear.
Right.
When truly everything is cyclical.
It is.
It goes around and
Absolutely.
around and around.
And there is an ebb and flow. So I always say life is like a heart monitor, right? If the heart monitor is just flat because everybody wants to be happy and everybody wants things to be like this, that's not life.
You did.
Life is up and down, up and down. And if your life is up and down, that means you're living.
Yes. Yes. What you could do, again, taught in all ancient scriptures, is begin to start finding more even balance that you could get into, where it's still going to be up and down. It just ain't got to be these super highs and these super lows.
Right.
You can have
Or stay low.
Even
or stay high too long.
Well, again, the energy it takes to stay high too long and the energy it takes to stay low too long, you see it all on people's faces, in their bodies.
Yes.
People, people are like, wow, you're 50. And I'm like, yeah, I'm 50. Like, well, you don't seem like a 50-year-old and so on and so forth. I'm like, I don't know what you necessarily mean by that. But at the same time, I'm not looking for these super highs and these super lows. People always, I had a buddy. Who, he was engaged to this woman. And he found out that she was a porno star. And he'd always rave about how good the sex was, so on and so forth, how he, whatever. And then
he realized she was getting paid for it.
Well, he still going on the porno sites, and boom, there she was. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And he was like, well, why are you not upset? Like, shouldn't I be upset? I was like, no, man, you got exactly what you was looking for.
Right.
That was like, your dream come true. Like, we manifest our lives and whatever. And I'm more in a sense of just that, like, amazed and in awe about how life works, about God's work, that I am to be like, oh my God, that's horrible. Oh, wow, that's the best thing ever. It's all great. Yeah. And that's the awe of God that is supposed to be talked about. The love of what it is that you're actually seeing out here. That there's enough space for everyone to create their own universe. Right? Like, this is what they're doing in white America. Like, they're creating their own universe. They like consciously, like, you know what, let's just create this bubble. We done with this experiment of us all finding this reason together. And we're going to create our own understanding and live in that. Right? That's like, wow. The true depths of what this is that we exist in. When you talk about, something again that might be very deep, but that there's multiple dimensions, right? They're playing with the talk of quantum physics within Marvel and all these different things. And so when you understand that a dimension is just simply a plane that's not available to you. Right? Like, you're in a different dimension of space-time. You were born in a different space-time. It gives you a different story.
It does.
And so every one of us actually lives in our own dimension. And when you start seeing that, oh, everyone's creating their own truth. Everyone's creating their own world. That's what they're explaining within this whole sense of quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
That there's enough space out here for all possibilities to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, taking it a little bit further. But you can, again, have Murphy's Law of where all things can go wrong.
Yes.
Because it's all
You
available
ascribe
to you. Yes.
Yeah, because you ascribe to it.
And you'll follow yourself right down that hole.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. Does Pop have a show today?
Yeah.
Okay. So, the internet isn't real. Pop gonna have a show right after me, okay? Don't worry. Just
real.
they in the chat talking about what's this BS? Where's Unc? He gonna be here.
They like the information.
No, I just wanted to, shout out everybody's opinions. Unc will be here later. He's probably walking in the door soon.
This is yoga for Black people.
Yeah, this is the God Harmony show for right now.
That's what this discussion is.
Yoga for Black people. And so, to circle back to the yoga that people see, right? I want to take a moment to shout out the Yoga Tree and for you to let people know what's going on at the Yoga Tree Co-op. First and foremost, it is owned and operated by people of color.
Yes, it is. The Tree Yoga Cooperative.
There you go. The Yoga Tree. The Tree Yoga.
I mean, everybody says it. Everybody says it. The Tree exists within South Central LA.
Yes.
It is a beautiful yoga studio. You should come out and check it out. What we do is exactly of what this conversation is to help reprogram minds. Right, a lot of people, they go and they see a bunch of skinny-bodied European Americans doing these different poses, and they think that that's what yoga is.
Right.
And so many years ago, I understood, like, oh, what a great trap.
Right. Right.
To get people in.
Yeah, because then they just want to ascribe to that, and if they don't get that, they just keep going back for that.
Right.
I get it.
And so we basically offer classes 7 days a week in South Central. Some are donation based, some are free as they're sponsored. We have a great 30 days for $39 special that we run every month. We really make it so that this is an accessible practice for our community. Again, I was born and raised in South Central, and it was, in a sense, my dream to come home and help other Bryans, if you will. My cousin shot and killed many years ago. I wanted to come back and now be able to explain to him, which now I know is all of us,
right?
That thing. And so we do classes 7 days a week. We have teacher training, which is now completely full for our summer. But we do the teacher trainings, which really, people think that our teacher trainings are about teaching people how to go out and be yoga teachers, when it's truly decolonizing your body, your spirit, your history.
I can attest to that.
And yoga.
I'm an alumni.
Right? And so when you go through this program, you come out feeling more empowered in who you are.
Amen.
And that's what it means to be a yogi.
Yes.
Right. And so we have, even tonight, if you want to come down to the tree, we are having what we call Elevate and Manifest, which is a cannabis-friendly and cannabis-sponsored event. It'll be a little manifestation talk. It'll be, and actually tonight we're having a marketplace. So at 6 p.m. it'll start a little marketplace. We're going to have some vendors selling some things in the studio. And then, of course, smoking. And then there'll be a little manifestation talk of how to bring things into your life. And then smoking.
Is that sponsored or is that donation? That's sponsored.
Well, this is something that it's a workshop that you have to pay for.
Okay.
But
how will they go and buy the ticket?
They go to thetreeyogacoop.org. Yes. And you could go to our workshops and get it there. You can, if you're on IG, we're at thetreeyogacoop.org or just the Tree Yoga Coop. You'll find us there. You can go to the link in the bio. Again, it's a sound bath, yoga class, wellness thing happening tonight. Tomorrow that thing is gonna be free. Where I'm gonna be teaching class at 9:30 a.m. and 8:30 we're gonna be doing meditation, all donation based. We have kids yoga tomorrow, and we're LA Cultural Treasure is what this is that we're being recognized for. And then later on in the day, I want to say 1 till 3, Jenna's gonna have another class, sound bath, a thing, and this is all free to the community as it's being sponsored by LA Commons and some other people that I can't necessarily think of right at this moment. But that is free to the community. Again, our mission is to bring this awareness to our community, to help our people. Again, because once we know who we are, there's no stopping us.
Absolutely.
It's us being programmed by their own BS, right? Whatever you watch on TV is designed to get you emotional, to have you reactionary. And that's to unbalance you so that you spend more time spending your money than you do loving yourself.
Amen.
And that's the trap of this greed system that they want to call capitalism. But again, capitalism is just the fair trade that's always existed. Again, when you go back to the Bronze Age and so forth, that's what allows our civilizations to grow is sharing of ideas.
Yes.
But when it's not the sharing of ideas, when it's me simply crushing you, then that's again evil and greedy. And that's what we live in today and what we are all okay in today. Within France,
that perversion?
Yeah, for France, you want to do something against them people, they like, no. They shut down the whole country. Everybody stopped working. We ain't going to, and they shut it all down. Here, 20 kids just got murdered.
Sorry, I got to go
to work. Yeah. Right, that's a national
It's just
tragedy.
Tuesday.
Right, the planes crashed into buildings.
I went to work that day.
Right, to where less people have died in those planes that crashed into those buildings than as kids have been killed on the streets. And we ain't shut the nation down?
No.
That's crazy. But again, they're sacrificing these children for white supremacy to uphold this power structure of this very elite. They're willing, again, to sacrifice the entire nation to hold on to their power. And if we continue to act as if we have no say in it, then we'll continue to go down with the ship.
Yep.
And yeah, off topic as always and whatever. But this is the point for me of why I have this studio. It's the one thing I think that as I touch one person, that person touches, 20,000.
Yes.
And so that way it can continue to expand to start, again, just spreading reason.
Right.
Spreading balance, spreading harmony.
Spreading harmony. Well, like I said, you already know this, but for anybody who's tuning in who don't know me, I'm Harmony. I am Harmony. My birth name is Lanice, but Harmony came about by a spiritual awakening that happened when I lost my mother at 29, and I really had to figure out who all these personalities that I had that lived in my head and how these different nicknames actually associated together and how to bring them together, and that's how I created Harmony. But as a trainer, I had always leaned into the young area of my life. Like, I have always been an overfunctioner, so every class in the gym I could teach. Like, I got to a point where I could teach every class. The first class that they asked me to teach that I could not teach was a yoga class. They said, just do the stretch. And I was like, I've done yoga since I was 19-year-old. Just stretching someone for an hour is not yoga. And so I took hold of the time during the pandemic. Two things I knew I wanted to get done within that time was I wanted to write a book, which I did. And when I finished the book, I registered for yoga. That's literally the order. And now, if I had to do over again, I would have waited till I finished yoga. But that's going to be the second book. The second book is going to be like yoga from a black girl's perspective. I promise y'all. I'm working on it right now. Because I really didn't ever see anybody in a yoga class that looked like us. I did not until I went to the school and I was like, oh, we do this. And our different body types and our different style and our different energy, but we do it like it was meant for us, like we created it, like everything else I've ever stepped into. Yes. And yoga literally became my first love. I fell in love with the yoga philosophy. I fell in love with the yamas and niyamas. Bratakarya. Am I saying it right? I say it wrong.
Brahmacharya.
Brahmacharya is the hardest one for me. I'm working on it, but I can't say it, and I'm working on being able to.
Working for a while, trying to get them.
That is the hardest one. Moderation. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but as the first intentional podcast, I wanted to have my yoga godfather here present to break down some history, to break down some yoga philosophy. And I hope that I've been able to do that for you guys today. Please tell the people where else they can find you.
You could find me IG, the 10th letter, or it's 10th letter yoga. That's my IG handle. You'll be able to find everything as
That's
well.
10th for y'all, not T.
Yeah, sorry, 10th.
Only because I'm looking at it on his phone so I can see it.
Yes, and again, you can find me at the tree. I am all things tree again. I'm all in. This is my business. This is my life. This is what I do. And so, like, the studio is actually my main home, and I live in my grandmother's house.
Okay.
Which is like where I just lay my head. Now,
I understand.
It's just again the generational wealth that my family still has, where my grandmother passed away 10 years ago, and so I'm able to still just live in my grandmother's house. Which again, the studio is just 15 minutes away.
Amen to that.
It's right there in my community that I was born and raised in. So I'm like really back home, living in my community, working in my community, in a sense, backwards gentrifying.
I love
LA.
that.
Because
I love that.
It's funny to walk out and see black people walking around here, and I'm like, wow. When I walk around South Central, I don't see it as much. In a sense, you have to get more towards Inglewood.
Right.
And whatever, because we've been able to move out.
Yes.
But there's power in us coming together.
Well, part of the reason a lot of us have moved out is because we couldn't afford to buy where we grew up. And so many of us had to move out. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of us, when given the opportunity to, do move back if we can afford to.
I mean, yeah.
I understand it. I have been blessed with a family who believed in owning houses. And I live in one of my family homes. I pay into it, rent just like anybody else. But it is a legacy that I am able to continue on. And I'm very thankful for it. It's not something that I understood because my family believed in you working to get it. My family did not believe in, we're just going to let you stay here. That was not the get down.
No.
Ever.
No. I mean,
not in my family. Not for me in my family. Maybe for other people in my family, but not for me.
Grandma's place was a place you could go, but you still catch shit if you wasn't doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? I'd always been, my mother moved us out to the Inland Empire, and she kicked me out when I was 17. Mm-hmm. And so I pushed ever since. Mm-hmm. I just, that was just I was like, I was going to prove them. Right. I was going to be able to do whatever. And so this is like me like coming home of where I was born and raised there. Mm-hmm. But as an adult, I lived outside of.
Right.
And so this was me literally saying, you know what? I want to build this thing and I want to do it where I'm from.
Amen.
And so like now I'm just actually able to go home and have the privilege. Now my kids are adults and everything. Mm-hmm. Just like I get to have another life. Mm-hmm. Stripping down my ego to live from that yogic principle of truly following my heart.
Amen.
And that's, I think, what we all should be aspiring to do is to learn how to listen to it so that we can follow it.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Nick, you've been real quiet over there.
I've been enjoying the conversation, man.
I love it.
My brother dropping some knowledge. So
I love it. I love it. Any last words for the people before I shut this thing down?
Wow. Any last words? Don't stop learning.
That's the truth.
I would say that. And I would say change is necessary.
Anything that isn't growing is dead.
Yeah, change is necessary. So I think you should seek change all the time.
Yeah. It's the only thing promised in life.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't seek it, you're going to get your feelings hurt.
Yeah, for real.
It'll find you.
Yeah.
I advise you to seek it.
Stuff is going to change. So hopefully be ready for it.
Speaking of cyclical.
Right. Yes.
It keeps coming around.
Yes. Yeah,
definitely keep learning.
Amen to
part
that.
Part of yoga is to be present, to really be living, is to be dying.
Yes.
Right? To be seeking that change is to be dying to yesterday.
Yeah.
to be accepting of right now.
Yes.
There is that, the importance of death.
Yes.
Right? Death teaches me to live.
Yes, it does.
And I can take as an avid snowboarder,
reverence.
right, that there's no greater focus that you can have than when your life is on the line.
Right.
And some of us, we need to have our life on the line.
Right.
Yes.
We need to have our back against the wall for us to finally act.
Yes.
And if you can live from that way of where your life is always on the line, that's you actually following your heart.
Yes. Yes.
That's real talk.
Amen to that.
It's so. I was telling somebody the other day. People call it procrastination, but I lean more towards what you're saying. I used to wait for the last minute for anything, and I would think about it literally all week or all month. I would literally run through what I'm gonna do in my brain, but I needed the pressure of the moment in order for me to focus.
Right.
Which is a weird thing.
No, it's not.
Well, I'm gonna say it's an uncommon thing because in most of the environments I'm in, most people don't want to be in that position. Well, I feel like I need to be in that position in order to feel like I'm alive, I guess would be a better way to put it. So I would just say embrace it, yo. Embrace it.
Yeah, people, I think that's people who don't like change.
Yeah.
Right, to say like, oh, I don't like. Well, you don't like change. You got to get like, you every 5 years you're a completely different person.
Yep.
That's real.
Like different. Right. Look back 5 years in your life, you're like, whoa. And when you start understanding that, now you just start embracing. Like, shit, I'm happy to be 52.
Right.
Happy to be 50. I ain't never been there before. I did that 20 before. I did that,
right.
Right. That's living.
Yes.
My opinion of it.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yes. Let me give a shout out to our sponsors. I have a long list. First and foremost, Danny of Lit Danny Tell It. I met at yoga class. My girl. She has given me this space to spread my wings. And Roll Out Digital for always allowing, us this space. I want to give a special shout out to the Heart Shapers, to my 213 hiking group, and my bestie squad. Like I said earlier offline, I had a death in the family this past week, and stuff has been kind of shaky because I lost the man in my life that set the foundation of what I understand male and manhood to be. He was all of the things, Nick, that you break down of the 3 Ps. He was a priest of his household. He was a protector and a provider. And so I definitely want to give a shout out to my pop, to my grandfather. May he rest in peace. And I thank you guys all for tuning in to the Got Harmony show. You can follow me on IG, Got Harmony, on TikTok, Got_Harmony, and we will be back probably next week with Danny. We'll let Danny tell it. And we'll be back with the Got Harmony show in the first Friday of July. So, I like to close by just saying namaste. May peace be with you. May be in you and surround you always. And stay blessed. Peace.